Hey, what's up? I am David Long. I'm starting this new series of short philosophy videos, and today's video is going to be about the cycle of suffering. I hope you enjoy it. Alright, the cycle of suffering is this Buddhist idea about the way that we pass on suffering from one person to another person. It's this unconscious cycle of pain and suffering where it's like your boss is upset because he's having a hard time, he's having a hard day, maybe he's having some problems with his wife. He comes to work and he takes that out on his employees. They're driving home, they're upset, they probably are yelling at other people in traffic and taking out that frustration that they have on other people. Maybe they go home and they're upset with their wife. Now she has a hard time, maybe she takes it out on the kid goes to school, he's a bully to other people, and it's just this continual cycle of pain and suffering being passed on from one person to another.
You live in a place like this, you're a baboon, and you only have to spend about 3 hours a day getting your calories. And if you only have to work 3 hours a day, you've got 9 hours of free time every day to devote to making somebody else just miserable. They're not being stressed by lions chasing them all the time. They're being stressed by each other. They're being stressed by social and psychological tumult invented by their own species. They're a perfect model for westernized stress-related disease. So you get some big male who loses a fight and chases a subadult who bites an adult female who slaps a juvenile who knocks an infant out of a tree, all in 15 seconds. So insofar as a huge component of stress is lack of control, lack of predictability, you're sitting there and you're just watching the zebra and somebody else is having a bad day and it's your rear end that's going to get slashed. So tremendously psychologically stressful for the folks further down on the hierarchy.
Every male knows where he stands in society, who can torture him, whom he can torture, and who in turn the torturee can torture. His early work, measuring stress hormones from extracted blood, led to two remarkable discoveries. A baboon's rank determined the level of stress hormone in his system. So if you're a dominant male, you can expect your stress hormones to be low. And if you're submissive, much higher. But there was an even more revealing find. Low rankers, the have-nots, had increased heart rates and higher blood pressure.
Basically, if you're, a stressed, unhealthy baboon in a typical troop, high blood pressure, elevated levels of stress hormones, you have an immune system that doesn't work as well, your reproductive system is more vulnerable to being knocked out of whack, your brain chemistry is one that bears some similarity to what you see in clinically depressed humans, and all that stuff, those are not predictors of a hale and hearty old age.
A lot of times it's very easy for us to see another person who's being a jerk or being mean, or they're caught up in their emotions and they're just letting it out. Really, it can be very easy to see that person as some kind of a mean jerk or a victimizer, when it might also be just as true that they themselves feel frustrated and angry and victimized in their own way. To some extent, we all know what it feels like to be in that kind of a position where we're angry and mad and we're just letting it out, even in a way that's not necessarily good or healthy. And in that moment, if someone comes up to you and they're yelling at you and they're mad and they're in some kind of a mean state and they're taking it out on you, it's very easy for you to be very mad and upset and maybe to freak out back on them or to take that home and freak out on somebody else. But this idea of recognizing the cycle of suffering and breaking the cycle of suffering, having enough calm and patience and self-control within yourself to be able to recognize it and see it when it's happening, instead of hating or being mad at this person who is clearly caught up in their emotions, what maybe we should do is have a little bit of compassion and empathy for this person. Sometimes it's that person in that circumstance who needs our love and compassion the most. Or at very least, maybe we should calm down and get to the point where we recognize what's actually happening for what it is. That this person is having a problem, and that their problem is not necessarily my problem. I don't need to let it affect me. I can just let it be their problem. This takes a lot of strength and maturity and a lot of practice, but I would invite you to try to break the cycle of suffering, to see through what's actually going on, and to realize that quite often, if not always, the person who's dishing out pain and suffering is a victim of pain and suffering and is hurting really bad themselves. So instead of getting mad, instead of lashing out at them or passing this on to someone else, I would invite you to break the cycle and to bring love to the table.
The Kink Rod Truth is the one I started with 30 years ago. They were your basic old baboon troop at the time, which means males were aggressive and society was highly stratified and females took a lot of grief, and your basic off-the-rack baboon troop. And then 20 years ago, something horrific and scientifically very interesting happened to that troop.
The Kink Rod Troop took to foraging for food in the garbage dump of a popular tourist lodge. It was a fatal move. The trash included meat tainted with tuberculosis.
It wasn't random who died. In that troop, if you were aggressive, and if you were not particularly socially connected, socially affiliated, you didn't spend your time grooming and hanging out, if you were that kind of male, you died. What you were left with was twice as many females as males, and the males who were remaining, they were good guys. They were not aggressive jerks. They were nice to the females. They were very socially affiliative. It completely transformed the atmosphere of the troop. And when new adolescent males would join the troop, they'd come in just as jerky as any adolescent males elsewhere on this planet, and it would take them about 6 months to learn, we're not like that in this troop. We don't do stuff like that. We're not that aggressive. We spend more time grooming each other. Males are calmer with each other. You do not dump on a female if you're in a bad mood. And it takes these new guys about 6 months, and they assimilate this style. And this particular troop has a culture of very low levels of aggression and high levels of social affiliation. And they're doing that 20 years later. Do these guys have the same problems with high blood pressure? Nope. Do these guys have the same problems with brain chemistry related to anxiety, stress hormone levels? Not at all. It's not just your rank. It's what your rank means in your society. We belong to multiple hierarchies, and you may have the worst job in your corporation and no autonomy and control and predictability, but you're the captain of the company softball team that year, and you better bet you are going to have all sorts of psychological means to decide it's just the job 9 to 5. That's not what the world is about. What the world's about is softball. I'm the head of my team. People look up to me, and you come out of that deciding you are on top of the hierarchy that matters to you. So what do baboons teach the average person? Don't bite somebody because you're having a bad day. Social affiliation is a remarkably powerful thing, and that's said by somebody who lives in a world where ambition and drive and type A-ness and all of that sort of thing dominates. And one of the greatest forms of sociality is giving rather than receiving, and all of those things make for a better world. If they're able to, in one generation, transform what are supposed to be textbook social systems sort of engraved in stone, we don't have an excuse when we say there's certain inevitabilities about human social systems.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed this quick little philosophy bite, this short little something to think about, I would invite you to share it, to like it, to subscribe to my channel, and maybe even go check out some of my longer philosophy videos. If you have a suggestion for a future episode, or some kind of a story about how you've broken the cycle of suffering, post it down below. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks. Peace.